Adrian Cruz liked to say that the Atlantic talked to him first, before it bothered sending whitecaps to anyone else on South Beach. Some mornings it whispered, sliding silk blue water across his feet while he set up the red and yellow lifeguard flag. Other days it muttered, rolling a grumpy chop that meant he would spend the shift yanking intoxicated tourists off sandbars. But on the August dawn when everything started, the ocean spoke in a voice he had never heard. A metallic humming under the swells, as if someone were beating on a submerged drum. The note vibrated through the pilings of Tower 6 and into Adrian's chest like a second heartbeat. He scanned the horizon. No thunderheads, no waterspouts, just a haze of heat so thick it looked braided. Yet the humming wouldn't quit. At 6:40 a.m., a pocket of waves 40 yards out began to churn without wind, forming a perfect spiral. Adrian radioed it in as a possible rip, then grabbed his can buoy and sprinted. By the time he dove, a figure surfaced in the vortex, bronze-skinned, silver-haired, thrashing. The kid couldn't have been more than 16. Adrian hooked an arm around the narrow torso, kicked free of the whirl, and towed the stranger to his rescue board. Only when sunlight hit the body did Adrian see the fins, transparent, pearl-rimmed, folding neatly against the lad's ribs like dragonfly wings. "You're kidding me," Adrian whispered, treading water. The boy's eyes flickered open, pupils slit like a barracuda's. He hissed in accented English, "Let go. They'll see." "Who'll see?" Adrian asked. Instead of answering, the boy produced an obsidian conch the size of a manga. Lightning skittered inside its glassy shell, the way fireworks trembled behind closed lids. Even holding it above water, Adrian felt raindrops on his neck. The humming grew louder. No, closer. 3 more spiral rips erupted beyond the break, each rotating counterclockwise like drills boring into the sky. Adrian hauled the Mertine onto his board and paddled hard toward shore. A couple of early joggers looked up, but the whirlpools collapsed before anyone caught proof on their phone. By the time EMS arrived, the kid had lost consciousness. Adrian stashed the conch inside his wet bag and told paramedics the patient was dehydrated. They didn't notice the gills under his curly hair. Not yet. Back at headquarters, Captain Serrano cornered Adrian. "Hospital says your rescue vanished from the gurney. Disappeared into the ER sink like an eel. You want to explain?" Adrian thought about the conch, now hidden in his locker, humming faintly through 3 towels. He wasn't ready to tell his boss that Miami's biggest threat wasn't rip currents or sharks, but a teenager with fins and a portable thunderstorm. So he lied. Maybe the kid was in shock, ran off. Serrano narrowed his eyes. "Storm advisories say a tropical depression just popped up south of Key Largo. That sound familiar?" Adrian shrugged, but inside pieces linked. The unnatural whirlpools, the runaway merfolk, and the newborn storm brewing too fast for satellites to predict. Something was smuggling weather up the Gulf Stream, delivering it like narcotics. He took the conch to the only person who wouldn't laugh him out of the city, Mama Nena, his abuela, who sold Santia candles from a little Havana botanica. The old woman weighed the shell in her arthritic palms, listening to its distant thunder. "Enchanted tormentas," she said. "I heard stories when I was a Nina. Sea witches brew them in coral labyrinths, but they are instruments, not weapons. Someone must pay for them, choose their targets." "Who'd buy hurricanes?" Adrian asked. "Who profits when the coast floods?" She countered. "Land vultures. Reconstruction contracts. The same cabronis always." Adrian thought of the Caliban cartel, whose speedboats he'd seen sweeping cocaine through Biscayne before the Coast Guard tightened nets. If smugglers couldn't outrun new radar, maybe they'd found a wetter product. Storms themselves, impossible to trace, catastrophic on arrival. While Nena blessed the conch with rum and crushed marigold, Adrian felt the house rattle. Outside, dwarf palms bent in a wind that hadn't existed 5 minutes earlier. On the kitchen radio, the National Hurricane Center upgraded the Key Largo disturbance to Tropical Storm Fulminata. August had only begun. That night, the escaped Mertine broke into Adrian's apartment through the balcony. He wore a hoodie still damp with salt water, hiding gill slits and translucent fins. Adrian, startled mid to toothbrushing, nearly swallowed his paste. "My name's Callio," the teen said. "I owe you." "You owe me a new sliding door," Adrian grumbled, though he made no move for the baseball bat behind the couch. Talk. Callio explained that he was Tideborn, part of the Lithari clan who ruled the outer reef trenches. For centuries, they brewed storms as currency, trading tempests to coastal shamans in exchange for metal tools and surface luxuries. The arrangement stayed modest, one typhoon every decade until the Caliban cartel discovered them. Humans had demanded quantities beyond custom, forced Lithari artisans to package hurricanes in obsidian conduits, then threatened to poison seagrass nurseries with chemical runoff if the merfolk refused. "We've filled the quota," Callio said, shivering despite the Miami humidity. "But the cartel wants more permanent hurricane season. They'll anchor fulminata over Florida until every port bows." "Then your people have to stop delivering," Adrian insisted. Callio curled his webbed fingers. "The cartel kidnapped our storm shaper, my sister Nida. They hold her near Coral Castle, make her sing new vortices into the shells. Without her, the labyrinth is silent, but she'll drown in air soon." Adrian rubbed his temples. Yesterday his worries were jellyfish stings. Now he was negotiating international meteorology extortion. But he also remembered being 16, newly immigrated from Matanzas, powerless against men with bigger boats and darker threats. He couldn't leave Nida shackled in some limestone tourist trap while Florida became a blender. "I'll help," he said, "but I need an audience with your elders. We force a ceasefire, free your sister, and shut down the supply chain before Fulminata makes landfall." Callio's eel-quick grin revealed gem-like teeth. "You'll have to dive the coral labyrinth. Humans get lost." "Good thing I know how to read water." They met at dawn off government cut. Adrian wore scuba gear, but Callio laughed and yanked out the regulator. "Work. The labyrinth twists currents till hoses knot. Drink this instead." He offered a vial of milky brine. Adrian swallowed and felt gills itch behind his ears. "Temporary," Callio promised. Magic tasted like battery acid and mangoes. They descended past neon coral towers, through archways carved by parrotfish the size of scooters. The labyrinth wasn't geometry, it was music. Tunnels opened when Callio sang, closing behind them like velvet curtains. Bioluminescent algae painted sheet music spirals along the walls. Sometimes Adrian glimpsed shadows trailing other merfolk smugglers, armed with sawfish-barbed spears. Word had spread a surface man carried the stolen conch. After an hour, the passages widened into a Colosseum amphitheater woven of brain coral, its ridges inscribed with hurricane tracks going back millennia. He floated 3 Lithari elders in robes spun from jellyfish filament. They regarded Adrian with eyes that reflected storm radar loops. Elder Thalos spoke directly into Adrian's mind, bypassing sound. "Surface walker, why should we risk annihilation to spare your sandcastles?" Adrian's lungs burned against their borrowed gills. He clutched the obsidian shell because storms don't choose who they drown. The cartel wants a weapon that can't be aimed. Miami today, Lithari nurseries tomorrow. End this trade before no coast remains for either of us. Images cascaded through the elder's thoughts. Oil-slicked dolphins, condos shattered, coral bleached bone white. Yet commerce's lure glimmered too. Crates of gold, doubloons, LED jewelry, topside marvels the Lithari coveted. Thalos's voice softened. "The cartel still holds Nida. Then we break her out together," Adrian said. "You cut deliveries. I'll handle the humans if you secure the storms already sold. Deal." Silence rolled like deep-sea groan. Finally, another elder nodded, scales clicking. "So be it. Return Nida before moonrise, or Fulminata's compass stays fixed on your shore." Callio guided Adrian back to daylight. The borrowed gills evaporated, leaving tingling scars. They commandeered a jet ski from a rental stand. Adrian left a scribbled IOU. Thunderheads bruised the western horizon. Fulminata, arriving fast. Coral Castle, actually a junkyard villa once built by an eccentric Latvian immigrant, lay 30 miles south in Homestead, now cartel countryside. They rode channels where mangroves leaned like eavesdroppers, switching to a borrowed jeep in Cutler Bay. Near the limestone fortress, rain began sideways. Adrian felt the storm's pulse through the conch stuffed beneath his poncho. Fulminata was small, yet but angry. Guards with cartel tattoos patrolled the gate, AK-47s slung casual as pool noodles. Kaleo slipped into a drainage ditch, water embracing him like a returned son. Adrian scaled the wall, lifeguard muscles finally earning their keep. Inside, past coral block obelisks, Nida sat in a plexiglass aquarium no larger than a pickup bed, oxygen pumped through fish tank bubblers. Wires ran from her temple sensors to laptops where technicians monitored wave patterns. When she sang, miniature cyclones spun in mason jars lined up like moonshine. Adrian dropped behind a palm, heart jackhammering. He counted 5 guards outside, 2 inside. He had no gun, only a rescue whistle, a rope, and the fact that storms favored him today. That would have to be enough. He signaled Kaleo, who surfaced in the tank behind his sister, melting through a filtration grate. Adrian blew his whistle once, shrill, ear-splitting. On the beach, that meant clear the water. Here it startled parrots and men alike. Guards whirled. At the same instant, Nida flicked her wrists. Water surged over the tank's rim, shorting out nearby equipment in a fountain of sparks. Kaleo launched himself, tackling a gunman. Adrian used his rope like a lasso, yanking another's knees. Bullets strafed limestone. A stray shot cracked the jarred storm. One shattered, unleashing a fist-sized tornado that hurled laptops into trees before dissolving. The firefight lasted 90 seconds. When it ended, 3 guards lay unconscious. The rest fled toward ATVs. Nida, glass shards embedded in her fins, floated weakly in the flooded courtyard. Fulminata's outer band slammed overhead, twisting palms to torches. They had hours before the eye. Adrian hustled the siblings to the jeep. "We return her to the elders. Storm debt cancelled." "Not yet," Nida croaked. "Cartel planes still carry shells to drop over shipping lanes. We must recall them." "How?" Adrian asked. She touched the obsidian conch in his poncho. "That shell holds the master wave. Blow it in open sea and every storm bound to our song will answer." Adrian considered the hurricane chewing southern Biscayne. "Then let's give it a different address." They barreled north, along US 1 as Fulminata clogged roads with ankle-deep water. Traffic lights hung dead. Emergency alerts pinged phones. Storm aggraded. Landfall imminent. Adrian detoured to the beach beside Hallover Inlet, where wind lashed sand in singing sheets. He shouldered the conch and faced the frothing Atlantic. "Last chance to bail," he shouted to Kaleo and Nida. "Blow!" Nida replied, her voice full of thunder already. Adrian pressed lips to volcanic glass. The note that burst out wasn't music, it was geography rearranged, like ripping a map and letting new borders bleed through. The sea rose, then flattened, silent as an indrawn gasp. Out on the horizon, Fulminata's spiral shivered. Radar later recorded the anomaly. The storm pivoted, reversing rotation, its eye elongating into a figure 8, before dissolving into cold rain. Behind Adrian, discarded shells hidden all along the coast detonated in reverse. Each swallowed its storm back, imploding light into midnight. Cargo planes over the Gulf reported turbulence so severe they turned south, dumping payloads into open water where they fizzed harmlessly. Miami, still soaked, would remain standing. When the conch cracked in Adrian's hands, splitting like a black egg, he thought it was over. Then a roar exploded behind him. Captain Serrano, wearing a rain slicker and fury, stomped across the flooded boardwalk. You commandeered city property, disappeared mid-shift, and apparently redirected a tropical storm? He yelled over the dying wind. Do you know how many protocols that breaks? Adrian, soaked and shaking, laughed. All of them, sir. Serrano looked past him to the ocean, now eerily calm, as if someone had pressed mute. He exhaled. File the paperwork tomorrow. That night, under retreating clouds, Adrian escorted Nader and Carlio back to the labyrinth. The elders awaited, currents rippling their ceremonial robes. When Nadi swam into Thalos's embrace, the coral amphitheatre glowed, polyps blinking like 100,000 thank you notes. Thalos turned to Adrian. Surface Walker, you have balanced the ledger. The Lithari hereby cease all trade in store. Cartel threats will meet reef justice. Go in peace. Adrian nodded, lungs aching for human air. Before leaving, he asked one more favour. Can you mute that humming near Tower 6? It spooks the tourists. A ripple of amusement passed through the elders. Agreed. He awoke on South Beach sand at sunrise, wrapped in Callio's hoodie, sea foam tickling his toes. No sign of merfolk, only a single scale the colour of moonlight stuck to his wrist like a secret badge. Fulminata had unravelled to a tropical wave overnight. Forecast to water only mariners' yarns. Tourists returned by afternoon, sipping pina coladas under umbrellas. Adrian replanted himself. They'd complain about sand in their shoes, clueless how close the city had come to permanent monsoon. That was okay. Lifeguards saved people who never knew they were drowning. Toward dusk, Captain Serrano strolled up the tower. Paperwork's a mess, he said, though his moustache twitched with grudging respect. They're calling yesterday a naturally unexpected meteorological oscillation. Nice phrase, Adrian said. Weather Service wants to interview you. What should I tell them? Tell them the Atlantic changed its mind. Serrano followed Adrian's gaze seaward. The water looked ordinary sun-flecked, touristy yet. Far beneath, a labyrinth of coral hummed lullabies instead of war drums, and an entire kingdom set about reinventing its economy. Up here, Adrian logged riptide probabilities and rotated the watch flag to green, calm conditions. For now, at least, the ocean's voice was gentle, and he had every intention of keeping it that way.